Imagine a world where every voice is heard, every vote counts, and every citizen has a say in the decisions that shape their lives. Sounds like the ideal democracy, right? Well, what if I told you that democracy, in its purest form, is mathematically impossible? Stay with me. This might just change the way you think about politics forever. What is democracy? Democracy, at its core, is the idea that everyone has an equal say in how a society is governed. Citizens vote on issues, elect representatives, and work together to create laws that reflect the will of the majority. But as simple and fair as that sounds, the reality is far more complicated. Here's the first problem. Even in a system where everyone votes, how can you be sure that the result truly represents the will of the people? Well, let's dive into some math. Arrow's impossibility theorem. Let's take a step back and explore a concept known as Arrow's impossibility theorem, named after economist Kenneth Arrow. This theorem states that it's impossible to design a voting system that perfectly translates individual preferences into a collective decision, while also meeting a set of seemingly reasonable criteria. Arrow identified 5 basic principles that any voting system should follow. These are unrestricted domain, non-dictatorship, Pareto efficiency, independence of irrelevant alternatives, and transitivity. Sounds simple enough, right? But here's the catch. There is no voting method that satisfies all 5 of these principles at the same time. Cut to visuals of voting boxes, people voting, and then an error symbol. The paradox of majority rule. Let's break that down a little. Think about majority rule, the idea that the option with the most votes wins. In theory, this seems fair, right? But what happens when different people rank their choices differently? Cut to a visual showing a voting poll with multiple candidates. Let's say you have 3 candidates: Alice, Bob, and Carol. 40% of voters prefer Alice, 35% prefer Bob, and 25% prefer Carol. Seems pretty clear that Alice should win, right? But now, imagine you have a different set of voters, same preferences, but they rank Bob and Carol in reverse order. When you add in the fact that people might vote strategically, or even change their preferences based on how the voting system works, the result can change in unpredictable ways. And suddenly, Alice might not be the winner anymore. This is the paradox of majority rule, when the majority can fail to reflect what people actually want. The Condorcet Paradox. Now, here's where it gets even trickier. Meet the Condorcet Paradox. In a simple 2-candidate race, the majority will almost always pick the better option. But when you have more than 2 candidates, things get weird. You might have situations where no candidate is the overall winner, because voters can't agree on who's the best. Cut to a visual of a voting table with 3 candidates competing. Let's say Alice beats Bob, Bob beats Carol, but Carol beats Alice. Now, how do we determine a winner? This is a real problem that many voting systems face. No matter how you tally the votes, there's no clear, consistent outcome. The problem with perfect representation. Even if you could somehow avoid all of these paradoxes, we still face another issue. Perfect representation. If a voting system were to perfectly represent every single individual's preferences, we'd need an infinite amount of information and time to make decisions. Imagine trying to get every person's opinion on every issue, constantly. It would be chaos, and yet, the demand for perfect representation is at the heart of democracy. People want to feel heard, and they want their votes to truly count. But mathematically, that's simply not feasible. Conclusion: is democracy still worth it? So, what does all of this mean? Does this mean that democracy is doomed to fail? Not necessarily. While it's true that democracy is mathematically imperfect, it's still one of the best systems we have. It gives people a voice, encourages participation, and holds governments accountable. But we have to recognize its limitations. In the end, democracy isn't about mathematical perfection. It's about finding a system that works well enough for society's needs, while acknowledging that no system is perfect. And maybe that's the beauty of it. It's not flawless, but it allows for growth, change, and the possibility of a better future. Call to action. If you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts on democracy. Is it truly impossible? Or can we still make it work? Let me know.